Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. This is episode 190, and we're going to be talking about becoming the best version of yourself. And I brought on expert Renae Peterson, and Renee is from Canada, so don't
Mm.
hold that against her because there's a lot of smart people in Canada. And so, welcome, Renee, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So, thanks for all you do, highlighting people and the work in the world. That's pretty amazing.
I've been doing this for feels like forever, but I started this podcast in 2018, so we're going on 4 years,
It's great.
and we're going to be hitting 200th episode in a few months, and so it's kind of cool. I've interviewed people several times, the same people,
Yeah.
but most of the people are unique with their special abilities and their superpowers, and
Yeah.
and I think what you're doing is brilliant because
Thank
you're helping to empower the next generation, or even the current generation, and
you. Yeah,
giving them an idea of how to make what they're doing better.
totally.
And I think that's we and I think COVID really depressed a lot of people.
Hmm.
And so coming out of that pandemic, people are wondering what it is,
Hmm.
do I do now? I mean, what can I do? What is my passion? How do I be better?
Mm.
And so I'm glad that there's people like you that are out there
Oh,
helping.
thank you.
As
Yeah. And I think COVID just highlighted how much emphasis we put on the external.
hmm
Right, and how much validation from the external, or like how much that external determines our happiness.
right,
And so in a way, I think that was one of the greatest gifts, one of the greatest wake up calls to go, okay, when I'm not getting that validation or all of that, distraction from that inner self, or distraction from self, how do I stay connected to
hmm
that inner part of myself, truly, where all that wisdom, the happiness, the
right.
connection, and all of that really ultimately lies. And so just highlighting the need for that on deeper levels, I think it was such a gift during that time for sure. So
For me, that connection was always about people
totally.
and being, I've been working out of my home for the last 10 years. So for me, it never really bothered me, having everybody say, "Oh, I'm working from home." Get used
Hmm.
to it. I've been doing it, but it's just when I want to go out and
Yeah.
connect with people. Now I don't have that ability, and
Right.
it's like as an entrepreneur who's you know who likes that connection when you go to seminars and now you're prevented from doing that. It's like very depressing.
Yeah, it can be for sure. Yeah, but it's also a mindset, right? It's
hmm
just like if we say it's depressing, and so it is, right? So I think if we can like also flip it and go, okay, but how else?
Right,
This is this, and so then what?
right.
Instead of getting stuck in the emotion. And that's something I'm so passionate about teaching our teenagers today too, is like, okay, and then what? And or what's the next best choice? What's the next best thought? And I think all of human nature is really how do we navigate and manage those inner emotions, right? That energy and motion, and they're our greatest gift. And what is the wisdom, what does that emotion want us to know, instead of getting stuck in the hard, stuck in the pain, stuck in it, to go, okay, but what does it want me to know? What is my next best choice?
hmm
But you know what I mean, just so we can keep that momentum and moving forward, and totally validate everything you're saying, and just even validate, okay, it's hard, and then what? Right? And what's next? What's my next best choice? So yeah, it's just
and I think entrepreneurs, especially, they don't understand that next step. um, they look at what they've been doing for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and maybe it's a lot of the same stuff, and they got used to it. They're not used to jumping out of that comfort zone, and then to tell them, hey, or to make them think what's next, they're like, I don't know.
right. Oh, I love this. Okay. So what I think some of that is like, because in the coaching industry, we're like, what's the next best coach? What's the next best
hmm
seminar? Who's the next best person to help me? Right.
Right.
And so we're always in that jumping out of self and into someone else's field to think that they hold the answers and all the stuff for us. And so I think, though, it's such a beautiful idea that if we can just step back within ourselves, We don't need to know how it's all going to play out or the how, but to know the next best step or the next inspired action is to listen to yourself.
Right.
It's to have
And
that quiet time, that daily, spiritual practice, if you will, connecting to your higher self and just tuning in and going, what feels right? And if you're in that and creating that environment within of inner alignment, you're going to be guided to what your next inspired action should be.
right. And I think sometimes that they get confused with the shiny object being that
Totally.
next best thing.
Totally.
And then, that doesn't work. So they get to the next shiny object and that doesn't work. And they spend a lot of their time, effort on the shiny objects when they could have just ignored some of that and focused on them instead of, you know, the
But I
objects.
think too, ultimately, we often know what to do.
Hmm.
Maybe we don't know how to do it. So it's just like, we grow a business or we do all of these things. Like we know who we are and what our purpose is. And when we really listen, we
Right.
often know, okay, I know this is my next inspired action, but we don't know how to do it. So then it's just like, okay, but who can help me do this? It's not that they come up with the idea, we have the
Right.
idea, but who can help me? It's kind of like, in a company, right? The CEO, the COO, or whatever. And it's just like, okay, how do we do that? How do we make that work, right? One has the idea, one executes. So it's just kind of like operating within principles,
Hmm.
right? And operating within a deeper knowing of self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that, and even for me, going back from when I started being an entrepreneur, which was almost 28 years ago, I had to read a lot of different authors to kind of figure out, okay, this is how they did it, but how can I make what they're doing part of me or utilize my personality into that to make it better? And
Mm,
I think that, in the political arena that we're in, and everybody's walking on eggshells and trying to be, politically correct, even in the United States and Canada, it's the
mm,
same. Um, People don't want to bring their personalities forefront for fear of you know being yelled at by somebody.
mm,
And
mm,
for me, it's I brought my sarcasm to the forefront,
mm.
and those who get me, you know
Right.
they
Yeah.
hire me, they spend a lot of money, they're great. Those who don't get me, I don't have to worry about them. It's kind of like, you know uh, rejection marketing.
For sure, yeah, and I mean, leaders are readers,
Hmm.
right? So we know that, and so people who are well read, of course, we can be like, okay, but that fits for me. That fits for me. Not like I'm trying to fit into that. I'm trying to fit into that. And so then it's just like, yeah, you take that and you go, okay, that feels good. I can incorporate that into what I'm doing. And
Hmm.
so, and I love how you said that. You're right. I mean, we all have a genre, we all have a personality. And so there again, the foundational work that I do with teens, it's about finding that inner alliance, right?
Hmm.
Because we can have behaviors as human beings to be like ones of compliance, right? Where we just comply and we want to fit in and we do the people pleasing and all those codependent behaviors. Or we can sometimes have the other angle, right? Where people are very defiant and that's where people are just showing up in anger and speaking at people, not to people. And whatever. I mean, everybody, and that's really ultimately trauma, right? However, either one reacts on either side of that scale. And so, what I'm inviting our younger generation to do, because they are the future
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, they are the future, great minds, to really teach them to be in that inner alliance,
Hmm.
right? So that they're not like caught up in those external trappings. And how do we really do that? I mean, thinking is a skill,
Hmm.
right? It's a real skill to be able to know how to think your way through things, how to feel your way through things, how to understand trauma, how that we know that trauma is a heightened sense of negative emotion, and then we put a negative meaning on it, and then that like starts to be in the operational system of the subconscious mind, and then that's how we behave. So if we can even get the younger generation to be like, well, and especially the teens, is who I work with, teen girls, is just really, I mean, because teenagers already look outside of themselves for that external validation. Wait, do you like me? Do you like me? Or do you know what I mean? It's a natural kind of part of development. And
Right.
so, I mean, that's so great, right? You're a grown man and you're like in your authenticity and you're just like, hey, this is how I roll, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But that at that young, tender age, their whole identity is being formed,
right.
right? And so if they are not taught these core universal principles, it really creates a legacy of pain, of mental illness, of like all of the health things that
And
we've seen through COVID. And so,
and I, I've noticed that, you know, young women who turn into older entrepreneurs, if they don't settle some of the internal
yeah,
external trappings that
no,
they've
it's so good.
that they've gotten in younger age, they become indecisive leaders.
There it is.
And so they come to me and they say, Rob, help me with the marketing. So I create this brilliant plan for them based on what I
Yeah,
think they need. And then they're all wishy-washy and and it takes them months to take a decision. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
come
there it is.
on. It's like, oh, you
Because they're
know,
not the mental equivalent of it. They
yeah,
haven't learned how to lead themselves. And so how can they lead others? And that's where indecision comes from.
yeah. But
Absolutely.
let's talk about some of these external trappings because
Okay.
I love social media, but
Yeah.
I don't like Snapchat and I don't like TikTok because
Hmm.
to me it's you have too many things coming together and it's ruining young children's mental awareness. They can't make decisions to save their lives now,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying that these social networks are any different than Twitter or Facebook, but I think that because you got the visual, you got the video, people are looking at these going, huh,
Yeah.
well, I think I can outdo that person with
Ooh, yes.
whatever I'm doing, and it becomes
Yeah.
more of a competition thing.
Totally. They're positioning themselves for validation instead of positioning themselves to be of influence.
Hmm.
Right? And so, and I believe, like, people say, "Oh, well, Renee, they're too young." No, they're not. It's like when we know better, we can do better. When we get them connected to that higher self and teaching them how their brain actually works and how it's gonna like want to keep them small and like all that neuroscience, the neuroplasticity, and we empower them, they can show up on those platforms as leaders and going, "Hey, we don't have to listen to this," or "Hey, do you realize what's being thrown at us? Hey, make your own decisions. Hey," do you know what I mean? Like having that younger generation show up in that kind of authenticity, that kind of self awareness. And you're right, breaking the generational cycles the women before us have gone through, myself included. I had to do lots of personal work. Part of my mission and my passion for this was because I was that good girl, that people pleasing. I knew exactly who I was supposed to be. And because I showed up in the supposed to be energy, then I got the love and validation that I needed. Right. And so then that creates a pattern. And so it takes waking up, it takes failed relationships, it takes those things to go, "Oh, wow, how am I showing up? And why is this pattern playing itself out?" And you're like, "Oh my goodness," right? Like, hell to the no, like that this is going to happen anymore, right? And that's a painful process to unravel. And I'm not going to say our future generation isn't going to have to unravel.
Right.
But I mean, I look at myself as a powerful, strong woman, and back then, even as a powerful, strong teenager. But if I'd been given back then what I'm teaching teens now, I mean, oh man, I just light years ahead, right? To have those,
Yeah.
that knowledge, those principles, those seedlings, those thought seeds, I call them, that then, impact beliefs, that impact identity, that then, impact how it plays out and is automated in the subconscious mind, and then how it out pictures into your life. And then until you get so sick that, I think everyone on this podcast should ask themselves, what am I seeing?
Right.
What you are seeing is what you are believing. What you are seeing is what you made everything mean. What you are seeing is that identity that you hooked into and linked hands with and made agreements with that are now just playing it out in your life. Like you are the creation and the creator, you're the cause, you're the effect of it all,
Yeah.
right? Because it all happens from that place. And so getting our young people to understand, like, okay, how am I going to look at this? Like, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And getting them to ask those bigger questions. It is like if I had fire, I'd be like fire,
Mhm.
because I just think it lights the flame, it lights the spark for what needs to change.
Right.
And so you're right. We have these platforms, and like, this is why I'm so honored to be with you today, because I believe that a platform is a privilege. And
Mhm.
so to have this privilege to speak about these things and to, illuminate different things in a different way of looking at it and going, we don't have to stay where we are. I
Right.
mean, when we can access that pure potential by understanding, you know, how the power of choice, the whole workings of spirit, soul, body, you know what I mean? The triune nature of who we all are. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the media doesn't allow a lot of that to flow through, and
no,
they
that's what we teach them though.
right.
What are you seeing? Do you want to even see that? Where do you want to put your attention? Right, and that's where I even these young leaders to like start balking against some of this and going, stop showing us this. We
Right.
understand what impacts our brains, we understand what impacts our minds, and that is enough.
Hmm.
Right, and having our younger generation say, no, we want more. We want more enlightened truths. We want more, illumination of how our internal operational system works, so that I can show up and be all that I'm designed to be, not who you're all trying to like put me in a little porthole to be, right?
Right.
And so having them find that voice and almost that passion, that fire, that, I mean, the pain that they have from trying to fit into these boxes, and using that pain to gain the wisdom to then have that them triumph over it and then lead in a
Hmm.
bigger, better way, I just think is so amazing. Sorry, Rob, I can just go on and on.
No, that's
I
good.
hope everything I'm saying is even making sense, because it's just like, oh, I could explain it all. And sometimes
No,
the language,
there is, and I look at some of the TV programs today, and they I think they pull these women, not just women, but young boys and girls, and they give them these unrealistic expectations of what
oh,
life is,
mhm.
and then the kids like, well, Dad, can I have a cell phone? I know I'm 5 years old, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I don't. It just I look at some of these programs on Netflix, and I'm sure you guys have them up there too, and
Mhm.
but they're for me as a marketer, I always target people that are about my same age, in the 40s, 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
because those for me are the generation between uh, before they go to retirement, and they're still making some money. So to me, I don't know. Maybe it's for me. It's just that comfort level of dealing with people that are my age. But I have a lot of gurus that come to me and they say, Rob, you should target the early generation.
Mm.
Okay, you know what? I got 15 more years before I retire, and
Mhm.
another 15 more years, they're still going to be young. They're not going
Yeah,
to have any money.
yeah.
But when it comes to that, for me, it's I always target a different generation.
Yeah, and
But
we all have our thing, right? We all have our
right.
gifts, and
But
we're given.
I do want the younger generation to grow up to be more empowered, to be better thinkers, to understand that the media is out to get them. They're out to trap them.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of messages for sure, and when you just teach them how to deconstruct that, and
Hmm.
you can only have them look through that lens,
Right.
if they can look through the lens and be connected to self. It's the only solution.
Hmm.
Because if you're not connected to that part of self, you're going to be susceptible to those traps.
Right.
So it almost doesn't even matter what traps are set. It's like, oh, bring it on. It's like, oh, that's good. Oh, that almost worked. It's like, all right, do what you do. But I know who I am, and I can see the trap,
Yeah.
and I know that I have a choice to step in the trap or not.
Hmm.
Right? And so it's just like, that's the place
Right.
that I want our teenagers to come from. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing externally. It's just like the change begins within. It's just like, doesn't Gandhi say that we must be the change that we want to see in the world? And so it's just like doing it all inside and going, okay, what are my values? What do I believe? And like really helping them with that mindset. Like when something shows up, like I was just talking to my friend about this morning. It's like whenever we want to make a judgment on somebody, right? We're tempted to judge. Instead of getting into the energy of the judgment, to turn it around and just go, okay, that is just telling me and helping me get more clear on what I value. Okay, it's what I value. Okay, in inner alignment. And I don't have to give any energy to the negativity, and continue to expand that kind of consciousness into the world, but really just like once again in that inner alignment, that power
Yeah.
in, because it's only when you have that kind of power that you can make the changes against all of these external things that have just really been revealing themselves one after another, right? The darker side of life, if you will, right? So it's like it's all time to be revealed so that the light can be shined on it. So,
And the funny thing is I see those people, not only, teenage girls, but boys
oh, for
that
sure.
are labeled troublemakers, are labeled, kids that kind of buck the system. They go on to become the leaders.
A lot of
They're sick and tired of the
people.
schools and the institutions telling them what they can and can't do, you know, and
Yeah.
and and in fact, one of your greatest actors, Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's just great, but I can tell that he was just a troublemaker in school, and
Mm,
now he's this awesome actor, and people are like, oh wow, yeah, that's great. I really respect him. But yeah, but you go back to his schooling in his when he was a teenage boy, and I bet he was getting in trouble day in and day out.
right. And I will speak to that because I kind of, that's great. Like I love those spirited teens,
Hmm.
right? But at the same time, that's part of my passion as well. It's just like, because that is a form of defiance. But instead of labeling them, going, "Oh, they're bad, they're this, they're that," it's like I'm asking all of us as parents, as teachers, as educators, as human beings to go, "Okay, wow, what a spirited kid. I wonder what is going on inside. I wonder what he's really bumping up against within himself that he's like, I don't want to put up with this anymore." And that would have probably, if somebody could have seen and heard and held the space for that,
Hmm.
maybe he wouldn't have got in trouble as much.
Right.
Maybe he could have had more self expression. Because even when we're the defiant one and we're bumping up against other people's labels and we buy into that and we don't know how to manage our minds in that capacity, then that also creates trauma,
Hmm.
right? And it's the way that other people react to us. It's just like that's one of the most trauma forming things within each of us until we can really learn and go, okay, well, that doesn't define me, or whatever, all of that kind of
Yeah.
self-awareness and knowledge. But so yeah, I mean, I love those type of kids, but I also love when they know how to get into inner alignment,
Mhm.
because then
Let's
yeah,
talk about alignment, because
yeah.
w- w- and for me, and I might probably go off on a tangent here, but for me, when I see people give reviews and it's
Hmm.
out of alignment with anything I've ever done, and it's
Yeah,
just some wacky review that is, I'm like, wait a minute, they're not even a client. They're giving me this bad review. It has nothing to do with me. But there are people out there that'll freak out. They will lose sleep. They will, dedicate a whole week of their life over this one crappy review that had nothing to do with anything.
yeah.
To me, it's just let it go. I've learned to not even be concerned about reviews anymore, because I don't want it to suck up my whole day. So I
Totally
just
true.
let it go.
Well, and I love that. And I think too, the people that are doing that, in a way, I have compassion for them because it just speaks to their own lens,
Right.
their own creative process within the lens that they're looking through. And if they haven't healed their traumas or healed or done their inner work, then that's the lens that they're going to see, that they
Hmm.
will reflect and project. That maybe didn't look lovely, but right,
That
to
was
just
awesome.
to project it onto other people. And so it's it's something I'm still working on, to be honest. It's something I'm learning,
Right.
because I'm very tender-hearted as well, but it's just like putting up that shield of truth, I like to call it, and just
Oh, I think you're a
really
warrior. I think you could go out there with a sword and shield, just
I
taking
actually could. I
damage.
actually have a picture of that if I could run over there and show you. So yeah, that's my inner warrior for sure. But at the same time, I just think it's like I think curiosity can be our best friend, and we can just
Mhm.
be like, I wonder what's happening for them. I wonder why they felt the need to be mean spirited or to say it in that way. And it's just like, bless them and be on your way, and send it back with that kind of energy as well, because I mean, we know that karma is just an energy exchange. And so really, understanding some of those higher spiritual principles as well. But I just there's a lot of people that are hurting that haven't been given the opportunity. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think I would just say to anybody that's watching, and I'm so grateful, Rob, that you brought that up, because if anybody does, or if anybody says anything, don't react. Just step back and ask your higher self, why? Why is that really bothering me? Because it's absolutely 95% of the time not about the other person,
Right.
it's about you. And so get it right with you on the inside. And then if something's bothering you in relationships, whatever, be like, hey, this thing came up, and da 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 da. But you're right. As somebody who's trying to make a difference in the world, I mean, the mission has to be so much bigger
Mhm.
than what the people are saying along the way to try to distract you from your mission. Like you're right, it can't be given much attention to.
Yeah.
And if there's somebody that says something and you're like, oh, okay, maybe they didn't say that perfectly, but that is some food for thought and I'll consider it. But if not, then it's just like it doesn't have to be of any consideration. And it is a skill. Like that's inner alliance. That's knowing that your voice matters more than anyone else's. That knows that your truth matters more than anyone else's. And most importantly, that your intent
Mhm.
matters more than how anybody else is reading your intent.
Yeah. But
Right.
we live in a society that pushes that agenda, and that
Yeah.
all these reviews, everything that people say, the criticism you get in a newspaper, if people remember what newspapers are, um,
Yeah.
it's the media doesn't want to let it go. They'll pommel you to death, and I think some of these celebrities don't know how to handle it.
True.
Once you become, or even if you're just a regular business owner like most of us, you have to learn to take that criticism, because there's going to be people out there that are going to put you down, talk behind your back. They're going to say bad things, and it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It may
I think
not. I mean,
one
it
thing I
could.
heard someone say is like, you've made it when the haters come out.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, great. There we go. I'm making it.
When people criticize my books, and I'm like, well, at least you read it, and they're like,
Totally, and I
oh,
wrote it. I wrote it. Like, I put myself out there. I think Brene Brown talks about that, right? I put myself in the arena. If you're in the arena with me, great, I'll be open to what you have to say. But if you're not and you're just in the peanut gallery throwing the peanuts, well, sorry, like,
yeah,
bless, like, honestly, like, bless you. But if that, you can just look at it with so much love, and then go just like, if that's how they're responding to you, then imagine what else they're creating in their own life through
yeah.
that same mentality. And it's just, we can't be responsible for it,
Yeah.
right? We can,
And
yeah.
occasionally I'll have somebody that I went to high school with, and this is going back 35 years. They'll
Mm,
say, "Oh, you wrote a book. Oh, is it any good?" And they'll try to put me
yeah.
down, and I'm like, you know, I haven't seen you in 35 years, so I
Hmm.
don't really give a crap what you think.
Totally.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I think more people have to do that. I mean, more entrepreneurs have to give themselves more credit, and I think it's a confidence thing. I mean, even when I started
Sure.
my first business when I was 25 years old, um, when I didn't have confidence, people wouldn't give me the job.
Hmm.
When I had confidence, and I would give them a price because I was confident in my ability, they would
Yeah.
say, "Yeah, okay, no problem."
Yeah.
And my price could be higher than everybody else's, but they'd give me the job because I was more confident.
Well, I think people feel energy. right? Like we all feel each other and we know if it's sincere. And honestly, this is why I love working with teenagers because
Hmm.
they are the litmus tests of all litmus tests. And so it's just like when I'm teaching them and coaching them and mentoring them, it's just like they know if you're the real deal or
Right.
not. And I really believe that's why I've been so successful, is
You know,
because
and I'm glad that there's people like you right now teaching these teenagers, because what I'm seeing right now is more and more teenagers as they become in their 20s,
oh
they're
yeah,
making millions of dollars.
yeah,
You know, they're utilizing the internet better. They're utilize and granted, I grew up with the internet. I grew up with computers. But
hmm,
these kids right now are maximizing the heck out of it because that's all they know. They
yeah.
don't know a world away from computers.
Yeah. And
They're
like,
they're and
what a gift. Like, I love that because in a way, it's like as adolescents, you're right, let's clear away the stuff because we have one life,
Mhm.
like, we have one heartbeat, right? We get this one chance to like come here and experience it all. And we don't have time for the knitter natter and to teach our younger generation the things that we didn't know. And you're right.
Yeah,
So that ultimately they can step into their gifts, into their talents, and into their purpose. And just you're right. It is so exciting to
yeah,
see that because they have done something right mentally and connected to something on the inside to clear the space that they can step into that.
yeah.
It's so amazing.
But you know, and also though, I know I have noticed that I love the internet. I love everything it has to, to be able to offer people. But it is making some kids more depressed. I think it's giving them an artificial world because they don't know what's out there. They don't
Right.
know the things that I used to do when I was a kid, like go fishing and go out and play soccer. They're just embedded in this artificial world constantly,
Yeah,
and that can have some negative implications as well.
for sure. And I think that's though, as parents, as educators, it's like let's educate them on that.
Hmm.
Like let's give them those inner tools and give them better environments to be subject to so that they can have that skill set to go, okay, and desire
Hmm.
to not even be aligned to some of those things, right? They're just it's kind of
Yeah,
like looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for validation in all the wrong places. And I mean, of course teenagers are curious, like I said before, and they're looking outside themselves for identity. And so really just making sure that all of that is dealt with, with a level of consciousness that they're able to cope with what is also being thrown their way.
yeah, and,
Hmm.
and I think the biggest thing right now is cyberbullying, and that's something that they really need to, I think, help with.
Yeah. And I agree for sure. But like, I'm going to bring it back around too. It's like if we can teach those teenagers or boys, girls,
Hmm.
who they are and have them know their own worth and their own value,
Hmm.
it will stop the bullying because the
Right.
bullying only happens if we don't love ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why there's so much bullying or horizontal violence. And so we can do all these programs and we can do all those things which are so great, but I love getting to the root of it, and the root is self-love.
Hmm. How do people find you? Where do they go?
Yeah, well, my website, you can go to www.beautifulinsideacademy.com. You can book a call with me. I would super love to get on a call and chat with anybody and see how I can help. I run a group coaching academy twice a year, and I do private coaching all year long. And then you can just follow Renee Peterson on Facebook or Beautiful Inside Academy on Facebook or Instagram. And yeah, would just love to help in any way I can.
And if you're in United States, you can hike up to Canada and find her.
Yeah, there you go. Oh
Although
gosh.
that's a big
Yeah,
that's a long hike.
it's a long hike. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Take a plane.
So it's beautifulinsideacademy.com.
Yeah. Hmm.
There you
Yes.
go. And
Aw,
I think I found you on Facebook, and I was really impressed with what you're doing, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, and that's what makes you an e-hero. And
thank
and
you.
I'm glad that we had this time.
Yeah, me too, Rob, honestly, and bless you in all that you're doing, truly. And thank you for highlighting my passion and my work. So,
So all those that are listening, we'll see you on the next episode. And please, visit Renee at her
yes.
website and her Facebook, and reach out and say hi and tell her that
Yeah,
you saw her on or even listened to her on the podcast. And
that'd be amazing. Yeah, send
yeah,
me, DM me.
there you go. Adios, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much, Rob.